Welcome back. Got another great episode for you. This one, I'm going to talk about training with and through injuries. Before I get into everything, I want to say that I'm not a medical professional. I'm not here to give you medical advice. And I'm not here to necessarily contradict whatever your medical professional, be it a PT or a doctor, is telling you. I am a human performance coach. I've been one for 20 years. I have a master's degree in exercise science, and I've worked hand in hand with a lot of PTs and physicians over the years to train people through injuries. So I'm coming at it from that perspective. Also, I have a degree in psychology, and the mental aspect of training, the mental aspect of life is something that I've spent a lot of time on studying, working on with myself, working on with my clients. So I can speak pretty adeptly about that aspect of things as well. And so I'm here to give you general advice and understanding about what you can do to keep training while you have an injury and why it's a good idea in most circumstances, and how to approach that psychologically, and what happens sometimes psychologically if you don't approach it. And like I said, I'm not here to give you medical advice. I'm not here to contradict anybody. I'm just giving you some information and some general advice based on what I know scientifically and what I've done in my career to help people that are training with injuries. I have several pack mule members right now that I'm training that have injuries, and they're still making progress. I've done it throughout my career with various populations, so I'm going to talk to you about that. Before we get into it, pack capacity calculator. If you haven't downloaded yet, there's a free link for it in our in the show notes that you can download it for free, and then it's yours for the rest of your life. What's it going to do for you? You're going to do our 10-minute step-up test. At the end of that test, you're going to take your numbers and you're going to plug them into the pack capacity calculator. This is going to give you an estimated safe range for your uphill hiking. Now, that's not necessarily the weight that you need to train with, but it's the weight that you could likely carry safely uphill with endurance. Okay, so I built this model based on research for mountaineering and for different from different aspects of military research. And so what it tells you is based on the amount of step ups you can do in 10 minutes with 20% of your body weight, it tells you where your ceiling is based on how much room you have to go, right? So if you hit the base level of steps, well, you don't have much of a ceiling above 20% of your body weight, right? But if you fly and you hit way above the base number of steps, it's obvious that you have way more capacity and can likely carry more load safely uphill for a long time. So if you go to the show notes, download it, you'll get an email. It'll give you the link to the pack capacity calculator. That same first email is also going to walk you through how to do the test. And so you'll do the test, plug in your numbers, and you will have a good idea of where you're at right now. So if you know that you have a specific hunt coming up this fall, that you have to carry a certain amount of weight when you do it, could be a backpack elk hunt, could just be a regular elk hunt, could be a backpack sheep hunt, it could be just hunting in general. If you want to know what you can safely carry uphill, this is a great tool that helps you estimate that. Okay, now got my notes here. Let's get into what we're going to talk about. So in most circumstances, when you have an injury, there's always something you can do. And I think from a mindset standpoint, and also just from a maintaining your body standpoint, that's an important thing to know. There's always something that you can do. But it's not even just that there's something that you can do. Training while you have an injury, if it's not too severe, if you don't have an infection or anything like that, is going to help you heal, right? And so here's why. This is the simplest thing that you probably logically already think of and know. And that's that it maintains blood flow. It keeps your circulation up. And what happens when your circulation stays up? more blood flow, right? And you get more nutrients spread throughout your body. So your affected area, whatever you hurt, you sprain, break, whatever it might be, is going to get more blood flow. And a lot of these places where you get injuries, in ligaments and tendons, they don't get a lot of blood flow to begin with. So stopping moving, decreasing the amount of blood flow that you have is going to prolong the healing. Not going to. I can't say that with certainty. Would likely prolong the healing process for you because you're limiting the blood flow and they already have poor blood flow. Okay, so maintaining your movement is going to help you get more nutrients to the place where you're injured. And then something that your PT should likely be working on, but just for general education on your part, some loading of the affected area when it's ready is going to improve tissue remodeling. So to make sure that those tissues get strong again, to make sure that they heal in a good way, and to make sure that your nervous system still communicates with that area well. And so some things that you could do are isometrics, right? So holding just a position. Eccentrics, which are long lowering phases, right? Because they strengthen the tissues and continue that neural drive, and that the continued time under tension helps that. Now, one of the reasons that you'll see a lot of really good PTs do that even sooner than you think that you would expect is because complete rest weakens the communication and then also weakens the tissues, right? So there are some injuries, surgeries, stuff like that. You have no choice but to rest them. You can't do anything about it. But, one of the frustrations that I've had as a coach over the years is just some of these drastic measures where PTs or physicians or whatever will tell people to just completely rest, and then they'll completely immobilize whatever joint or muscle might be affected when they don't need to. Of course, there are cases when it's necessary, but the overly cautious approach of immobilizing those places when you don't need to decreases blood flow and then decreases use of that joint and loading it, which starts to make it weaker and decreases the amount of communication between that part of your body and the rest of your nervous system. So some loading, some movement, things like that, depending on the injury, can be really important to help you heal. And then, another obvious one that we want to look at is preventing deconditioning. So do things that don't affect your injury so you can maintain what you have to the best of your ability. And that's both from a strength standpoint and a conditioning standpoint. I mean, if you hurt your elbow, there's absolutely no reason that you can't sit on the bike and pedal. There's no reason you can't get on the treadmill and walk. There's no reason that you can't go out and walk, just in general, right? So doing what you can with areas that don't affect the injury is going to be important for helping to maintain your conditioning. And then plus all the things that I talked about before when it comes to the blood flow and everything like that. We want to prevent deconditioning because, for obvious reasons, right? Because if you lose everything that you've gained, let's say you have some injury and someone tells you to take 6 weeks completely off. 6 weeks completely off, like you lose strength, you lose conditioning, like a lot of things really start to go backwards at that point. So taking time completely off is a bad idea for the most part with a lot of injuries. But, like I said, there's sometimes that you have no choice, but if you take those 6 weeks off, will you, since you've adapted to those things before, will they come back faster than someone who didn't have them? For sure. Yeah. But if you don't have to try to rebuild them, why would you? Right? Like, why not keep what you have? It just makes way more sense. So we want to fight deconditioning. But another thing that a lot of people don't know, man, this did this last time. My notebook's not sliding for me. Is on the preventing deconditioning part. If you train the limb opposite of the limb that's injured, you still get a strength effect in the injured limb. It's called the cross education effect. What's the other name for it? cross transfer effect, right? So it's because strength is a neurological adaptation. So if you build or maintain strength in the unaffected limb, like if you train it pretty hard, it will increase neural drive to the other limb, right? So you'll save strength in that arm if you hurt that arm and you train the other one. Same goes for your leg, right? So it's important to maintain strength where you can, because it will help you train strength where you can, because it will help you maintain strength in the limb that's affected. So important thing to do. And if anybody tells you that that's not the case, they're 150 bajillion% wrong, because we have the evidence, we have the scientific evidence that says that that's true. So we want to maintain that neural drive. Hold on, I gotta close this notebook in my notes here and then reopen it because it doesn't want to slide. Why aren't you doing what I want you to do? There we go, got it. So that's something that the cross education effect is really, really huge. And I've had several clients that have had surgeries and things like that over the past year that we made sure that we still trained the opposite limb so that they maintain strength in the limb that they were healing, right? So cross education, cross transfer effect is really, really important. So training the other limb with a decent amount of intensity and volume is going to be important. You might be worried, well, my one arm's going to get way bigger than the other, or one leg. And when you start training regularly again, those muscles will hypertrophy and they will get bigger again. So don't get too worried about that. Play the long game, train the other limb so that your strength you maintain strength in the affected limb, and then it comes back even faster when you start training it. And then when we look at, and now I'm going to preface this by saying, like, I'm not super duper read into pain science. I've read some of it. So I'm going to tell you the things that I know from the pain science perspective and what I understand about psychology. So one of the things they work on in pain science is approach, right? Because the simplest way is to say this is like, if you sit still and you don't do anything, it's almost like you turn yourself into a prey animal. And prey animals are constantly sitting around looking for threats. It increases their anxiety, and you perceive threats more than you should. So you'll perceive more of a threat to the injury than you should. You'll perceive more of a threat to yourself. So things like anxiety rates go up, all of that kind of stuff. Any kind of movement that you can do while you're still injured is going to reduce that. It's going to reduce that threat perception. Also, just in general, it'll help keep the anxiety from it much, much lower. And then, as you get closer to being able to get back to regular use of that limb, it's important, or whatever it is, wherever you're injured, it's important that you approach it. And because first of all, it dampens your conscious threat perception, but then also it starts to teach your brain subconsciously that it's okay to go towards that. Like, you have that ability. So if you don't start that re-education process, you will sit more in fear and avoidance than you will in approach. And just to use maybe a bad analogy based on what we do, you want to be a predator and not the prey animal. Predators go forward, they approach, they go after the thing that they want. That's not what prey animals do. They sit in fear and avoidance, and they're constantly searching for threats. So you put your nervous system on high alert, and oftentimes it can make the pain worse if you're constantly doing that. So we don't want to go into that fear avoidance cycle. We want to approach however we can, and simply, it doesn't even necessarily have to be moving towards the injury at first. Just moving in general will help decrease that. It will help decrease that over that hypervigilance on threat and allow you to be in a better place mentally. Okay. And then another thing that you have to consider from just a general health perspective is that being sedentary does a lot of bad things for your body, metabolically, psychologically, everywhere, right? So one of the things it does is it dampens your immune system, and your immune system is very important in the healing process. So if you are sedentary for 6 weeks because of an injury or whatever, you're actually making it more difficult for you to heal in some place. Now, there are some times when, yes, you have to sit still. Your body needs all the resources that it has to be able to throw at the injury to help get it better. But in other cases, being sedentary increases inflammation, decreases the proper immune response and doesn't help you heal as much as possible. Also, being sedentary just changes a lot of things about how your metabolism works, right? So we want to avoid being sedentary if we can, because the metabolic processes that help you heal won't work as well. All right. And this is like all of the stuff that I'm telling you about, like in other countries, this is like part of the rehab model, right? Like they get people to move as much as they possibly can. And for some reason here in the United States, it's ass backwards. I don't know why. I think people are way more worried about being sued, especially, PTs, doctors, all of that kind of stuff. So they're overcautious. But like in other countries, that's like the modus operandi, right? Like get people to do as much as they can, as soon as they can, to decrease that threat detection, make sure that their metabolism stays healthy, use the cross education effect, and also just continue to increase blood flow so that the affected area is getting the nutrients and stuff that it needs. And then think about it from a habits perspective and a psychological health perspective. So if you get out of your routine of eating and training, you don't feel as good, right? If you're sitting around, you're not doing anything, you start eating worse. You stop doing all the things that help you make you feel healthy. And then it also does something like by decreasing your agency. And agency is just the feeling that you're moving yourself forward, that you have choice, that you can do the things that you need to do, that you have a sense of control. And it will start to decrease your sense of control if you don't continue to do things and try to maintain your habits to the best of your ability while you're injured. So it's super important both for physical health and for psychological health, because especially if you've established good habits and routines that support you with your health and your physicality, those things also support your mental health and your psychological well-being. So doing whatever you can to maintain your habits. And one of the things that we see when people stop moving as well, or moving as much as what I meant to say, is that they stop eating as well. And when they stop eating as well, it's harder to heal when you're not eating nutritious food and in the amounts that you need them. So psychologically, physically, physiologically, metabolically, everything, maintaining your habits as much as you possibly can during an injury is super duper important. And then there's the identity piece of everything. So when you stop moving, you stop doing the things that you do, you stop following through on your habits, you have an identity shift. You shift from the person who has agency, that does the thing, that is an exerciser, that whatever set of values you place on that, you remove them and they start to change. And then you start to feel worse about yourself. And then you see that whole cascade of things that we talked about from, the pain science perspective of approach actually limits threat detection and can decrease some of the pain, but also it makes you more fearful to get back into training at a full go and approach using the limb to the degree that you can that's been injured. So you want to avoid making that identity shift away from I'm the person that exercises and does things and maintains these healthy habits to the person who is sedentary. It's very negative for you psychologically, and then you'll see that cascade go through the rest of your body. All of these things feed each other from a metabolic and physiological standpoint up to the psychological and mental health standpoint. So this is all some basic understanding of why you should do as much as you possibly can while you're injured to maintain your metabolic health, to maintain your strength, to maintain your conditioning, and to maintain your mental health. So don't sit around and be a prey animal. Do as much as you can without making your injury worse and without completely contradicting advice. And mostly I'm saying a lot of that stuff to cover my ass, because there's a lot of times that I don't agree with some of the advice that people are given. But nonetheless, I'm a human performance coach. I'm not a PT or a doctor, but I've seen what works, and I've worked with the best physical therapists in the world to help people get through injuries. And I'm just giving you the information that is in line with what I've done with them. Okay? So do as much as you can while you're injured. You'll maintain your body, you'll maintain your mind, and it'll be easier to get back to full go when it's time to go full go again. Again, if you ain't downloaded that pack capacity calculator yet, click the link in our show notes and go download it, do the test, put your numbers in. If you have any questions, Todd@humanpredatorpackmule.com. As always, thanks so much for listening and watching, and I will see you soon. Oh, next episode, I'm going to explain our phase 3 of our early off-season program and what we're doing with that. So that'll be interesting. If you want to understand more about training and how I make decisions with planning for our hunters, it's going to be a good episode for you. Okay, awesome. That'll come out next week. Okay, again, thanks so much for listening and watching, and I will see you next time.